All right, so today we are going to be doing the Pythagorean Theorem study guide. So make sure you are preparing if you need to go over the rest of the videos that we had for this unit. Make sure you're looking over those to prepare yourself for the test that you have in class. So here's a study guide looking at the very first question. It says, determine whether the triangle with the given measurements form a right triangle. Show the theorem, substitution, and all work, and state yes or no as your final answer. Okay, so I'm looking at number 1, and they want me to figure out if something is a right triangle, or the values that are given to me is going to give me a right triangle. Okay, now in order for it to be a right triangle, I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem, and I'm going to see if my legs equal out to be the same as my hypotenuse. So I have my theorem, which is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Remember, you are getting a point for writing that down. You have to write that down. Okay, and looking at all of my values, remember the biggest number is always going to be represented for your hypotenuse. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute a 5 for C because C is my hypotenuse. And now I have 3 and 4. With 3 and 4, you don't really have to put them in order just because they're our legs, and our legs are going to be represented by either A or B. So you can use 3 as A or B. So I have 3 squared, I'm going to use it for A, plus 4 squared for B. Okay, so then I have 3 squared plus 4 squared is equal to 5 squared. I'm going to simplify my exponents. So 3 squared is 9, plus 4 squared, which is 16, 4 times 4, is equal to 5 squared, which is 25. Okay, now 9 plus 16, that is equal to 25. And I'm going to go ahead and bring down that right side of that equal sign because there's nothing for us to simplify over there anymore. Okay, because both sides equal to be the same thing, this is going to form a right triangle. Okay, so my final answer is just yes. All right. Now, looking at number 2, I have 11, 14, and 23. So same process, I'm going to use a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, remember the biggest number out of these 3 values is going to be your hypotenuse. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 23 for c, and then plug in the rest of my numbers, which is 11 squared plus 14 squared. So 11 squared is going to simplify to 121, plus 14 squared, which is going to simplify to 196, is equal to 23 squared, which is going to equal to 529. Okay, I still have to simplify because I can still add, which is 121 plus 196, and that is going to give me a total of 317 is equal to 529. Okay, now if I look at this, they definitely don't equal to the same thing, so no, this will not form a right triangle. Okay, all right, looking at number 3, same process, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Yes, you have to write this every single time. And I am going to go ahead and substitute. Okay, I have 12 squared plus 16 squared is equal to 20 squared. Remember, the bigger number is your hypotenuse. 12 squared is equal to 144, plus 16 squared is going to simplify to 256. Is equal to 20 squared, which is simplifying to 400. Okay, I still have to add because that is the last thing I have to simplify. So 144 plus 256 is equal to 400. Okay, in this case, they both equal the same thing on both sides. So yes, this will form a right triangle. Perfect. So now we're going to move into finding those missing sides. So looking at number 4, so the direction says, find the missing side length using the Pythagorean theorem, show the formula and substitution and all work. Correctly label your answer and round your answer to the nearest hundredth if or when necessary. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are rounding to the nearest hundredths and not the tenths. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this. Remember, I have my right angle right here, and anything across the right angle is going to be my hypotenuse. So I have C here, which we don't have a value for, and then we have our legs, which is 6 and 3. Okay, so since we don't have a value for C, which is our hypotenuse, we're actually going to go ahead and solve for C. So writing down my theorem, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my legs, which I have one leg is 6, so 6 squared. My other leg is 3, which is 3 squared is equal to c squared. Okay, simplifying my exponents, that gives me 36, 6 squared, 6 times 6, plus 9, which is 3 squared, is equal to c squared. Finish adding, 36 plus 9 is going to be 45, is equal to c squared. And I still don't have c by itself, so I'm going to square root on both sides, which gives me that c is equal to 6.7 centimeters. Okay, now that is incorrect because I still have to round to the nearest hundred. So you need to make sure that you're rounding to the nearest hundred, which is just 6.71. Okay, all right, looking at the next one, I have 3.7 centimeters, 4.2 centimeters, and then I have an x. Okay, remember your hypotenuse is always across the right angle, and if I look at my right angle right there, I do have a measurement for my hypotenuse. So we're not solving for c this time, we're actually solving for one of the legs. So I'm going to go ahead and label this one as a, this one as b, and of course c, my hypotenuse. So I have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, I'm going to plug in 3.7 squared for A. We do not have a measurement for B, is equal to 4.2 squared, which is my hypotenuse. Okay, now what I have to do is start simplifying, which 3.7 squared is going to equal 13.69 plus b squared. We don't have a measurement for that, we can't simplify. And then 4.2 squared is going to equal to 17.64. Okay, now solving for b, I have to get b by itself, so I'm going to subtract 13.69 on both sides. That cancels out on the left side, leaving me with just b squared on the left side of the equal sign. And then on the right side, I have 17.64 minus 13.69, which equals 3.95. Okay, now I have not solved for b yet. I still have to square root both sides. And when I square root both sides, I'm going to write this up here because we're running out of space. That gives me b is equal to 1.99 and centimeters. Don't forget to label your final answer. Okay. All right, number 6, we are once again look at your right angle and see what measurement is across it. And right angle across is your hypotenuse. So we have a measurement for our hypotenuse. We're once again solving for another leg. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can make more space. I'm going to use my theorem, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, and I have one leg here, which is a. I have my hypotenuse, which was right there across the right angle, and then my other leg b, which we do not have a measurement for. Okay, now if you wanted to use x as a instead, that is totally fine. Remember, the legs, it doesn't matter where you plug them in. Okay, so I have my leg for A is measured at 3 meters, so I'm going to go ahead and put 3 squared plus b squared. We don't have a measurement for b. And then for my hypotenuse, it is 7, so 7 squared. I simplify my exponents. 3 squared is equal to 9 plus b squared is equal to 49. Okay. I have to get b by itself once again, so I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. 9 minus 9 cancels out, leaving me with just b squared on the left side is equal to 49 minus 9, 240. Okay, now b is not by itself yet, so I have to simplify by square rooting on both sides. And b equals 6.32 meters. Okay. All right. Moving on to question 7, 8, 9, doing the same exact thing that we were doing. So using my Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. I do not have a measurement for b, so we are not plugging in anything for b. And we're going to go ahead and plug in 9 for a. So that's 9 squared plus b squared is equal to 15 squared. Okay. 9 squared is equal to 81 plus b squared is equal to 225. Okay. I have to get b squared by itself, so I'm going to subtract 81 on both sides. Cancels out on the left side, leaving me with just b squared. And 225 minus 81 is going to equal 144. Okay. B is still not by itself, so square root both sides to cancel out that squared. And b is equal to 12. Now there's no unit we can use for this. It's not given to us, so you can just leave it as 12. Okay. Moving on, this time we do not have a measurement for a, so I'm not plugging in anything for a, but I am plugging in a value for b and c. So I have a squared plus 35 squared is equal to 37 squared. Okay, simplify, I cannot simplify a squared, and when I simplify 35 squared, that is going to give me 1,225 is equal to 37 squared, which is 1,369. Okay, I have to get a by itself, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the opposite, move it to the opposite side. So minus 1,225 on both sides. Okay, on the left side it cancels out, leaving me with just a squared is equal to, and when I subtract 1,369 minus 1,225, that is going to give me 144 again. Okay, and the very last step is square root on both sides to cancel out that square that I have with the a, so a is equal to 12. Okay, and looking at that very last one, I have number 9. We do not have a measurement for c this time, so I'm not plugging in anything for c. So writing down my Pythagorean theorem once again, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, I'm plugging in a with 5, so 5 squared plus 7 squared is equal to c squared. 5 squared simplifies to 25, 7 squared simplifies to 49 equals c squared. I add those two numbers, which is going to equal to 74. Okay, and my very last step is to square root on both sides, so I can get rid of that squared on the c. So I have c by itself, and remember we're rounding to the nearest hundredths, so my final answer is 2.93. All right. Any questions? Well, you can't ask me any questions because you are not here. And also, this is not correct. Sorry about that, guys. So the square root of 74 is actually 8.6. Okay, there we go. That makes a lot more sense. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So this one says find the side measurements of the given triangle. Okay, so they want us to find out what this measurement is right here or this one over here. And what they do give us is They give us the hypotenuse right here, and they give us our height of the triangle, okay? Now, they want us to find the side measurements. How we can do that is we can actually make this triangle into two triangles, so we can actually get a right triangle to find one of the side lengths, okay? So we've gone over this in class. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to split this in the middle, okay? And if I split that in the middle to find what my side measurements are, I'm also going to split that measurement into twos, okay? So dividing 5 by 2, that's going to give me 2.5, okay? And if you're trying to figure out what that height, that red line that I drew in the middle of that triangle is going to be, they give that to us, okay? So this is the height of that triangle, so that means that this is going to be 2 centimeters. And they want us to figure out what this is going to be. Now, if I look, I now have 2 right triangles, okay, which anything across that right angle is going to be my hypotenuse. So what I'm really finding here is what my hypotenuse of my right triangle is going to be. Now, they're going to be the same thing on both sides because they're all the same measurements. So using my Pythagorean theorem, I have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, okay? And remember, we're trying to find out what my hypotenuse is, so I'm going to plug in 2 and 2.5 into a or b. So I have 2 squared plus 2.5 squared is equal to c squared. Okay, 2 squared is simplifying to 4, plus 2.5 squared is going to simplify to 6.25 is equal to c squared. Okay, when I add those two numbers to each other, I get 10.25 is equal to c squared. And I still do not know what c is equal to, our hypotenuse, so I'm going to square root both sides to get rid of that squared on the c. So that means that c is equal to 3.2 centimeters. Okay, when I square root 10.25. All right, moving to number 11. So number 11 says find the missing length using the Pythagorean theorem, show the formula, substitution, and all work correctly. Label your answer and round your answer to the nearest hundredth when necessary. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw or write my theorem. A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, and when I'm looking at this, they want me to find out what the height of the pyramid is, which if I were to draw that, that is just straight down the middle, okay? It's the height of the pyramid. Now, when I'm looking at the height of the pyramid, that creates a right angle, okay? So that means that when I have a right angle, I also have a right triangle within my other measurements, okay? So if you can kind of see, and I'm going to try and highlight this for you, I actually have a right triangle with the measurements given to me, okay? So looking at this right triangle, I know that my hypotenuse, which is my slanted measurement, is 12 centimeters, so that's going to be represented by C, okay? And then I also have this 6 centimeters right here. Now, we are not going to use all of those 6 centimeters because we're only looking at half of our base, okay? So we're only going to use half of that base, okay, to use our right triangle. So plugging in this information, we have one leg and we have a hypotenuse, so we're finding out what my other measurement of the leg is, which is the height of the pyramid. So plugging this in, I'm going to go ahead and leave a squared alone because we're going to identify that missing leg as a. Then I have 3 squared for the base, which is going to be one of my legs. And then my hypotenuse, which is 12 squared. It's a measurement of that side. Okay. Simplifying it, I cannot simplify a squared plus 3 squared, which is going to be 9, is equal to 12 squared, which is 144. Okay. I have to get a squared by itself, so I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. And 144 minus 9 is equal to 135. Okay. Now B or A is not by itself yet, so I'm going to square root to get rid of that squared. And that leaves me with just A. Whatever you do to one side, you also have to do to the other side. So I now have the square root of 135. And keep in mind, it tells me to round to the nearest hundredth. So when I square root 135, that is going to give me 11.62 centimeters. Don't forget your label. Okay. Perfect. Moving on to number 12. Now, we want to make sure that we remember our ordered pairs are always x and y. So you're moving along the x-axis first and then y. Okay, so looking at point A, I am plotting these points. I have -6, so I'm going to move along -6. Okay, and then I'm going to go down to -4 because that's my y value and plot my point. Okay, so remember you're moving along the x-axis and then the y. All right, and that is point A. Now point B, I have, once again, -6. I'm going to move along the x-axis for -6 and then move up because it is a +4. And that is point B. And doing the same thing for point C, I am starting at the origin. We're not moving anything for our x value because it is a 0, so I'm just going to go straight down through the y and plot my point on that -4, which is point C. Okay, now they want me to find the distance between point B and C. Okay, and that is my hypotenuse. Remember, slanted, when we think of slanted, that is my hypotenuse. And when I draw the rest of my right triangle connecting the rest of my points, I see that I have a leg between A and C, points A and C, and I have another leg between points A and B. Okay, now when I'm trying to use my Pythagorean theorem to find out my distance, okay, I'm just counting the units between each point for my legs. Okay, so looking at, I'm gonna label this one as leg A. Okay, I'm gonna count the units, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 units between A and C, and that is leg A. And if I label this one as leg B, I'm counting the units once again. I have, starting down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I have 8 units between A and B, which is leg B. Okay, plugging this into my formula, I have 6 squared plus 8 squared is equal to C squared. And simplifying, 6 squared is going to give me 36. 8 squared is going to give me 64 is equal to C squared. Okay, I can still simplify by adding my two numbers. So 36 plus 64 is equal to 100 is equal to C squared. And my last step is going to be square root. So I square root both sides, and C is equal to 10 units. Okay, the square root of 100 is 10. All right, moving on. It says use a Pythagorean theorem to find the missing link. Show the theorem and substitution in all work. Correctly label your answer. Sketch a diagram of the scenario described if needed. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. Now, when you're drawing or sketching your scenario, you don't have to draw me a picture as long as you can see that you are going to have some type of right triangle. That is fine. Okay. Now, looking at number 13, it says a ladder is leaning against the side of a 10-meter house. Okay, so that means that my house, a ladder is leaning against the side of a 10-meter house. So let's say that this is my house. And that means that the side of that is 10 meters. Okay, if the base of the ladder is 3 meters away from the house, how tall is the ladder? Now, when you put a ladder against the side of a house, it's going to be slightly diagonal, okay? Meaning that is going to be your hypotenuse, okay? And then it also says the base of the ladder is 3 meters away from the house. So the base is right here, and it's away from the house 3 meters. Okay, so I get 2 legs. All I have to do is find what the height or how tall the ladder is, which is c. Okay, so using a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, I am plugging in the information given to me to find out what c is going to equal. So I have 10 squared plus 3 squared is equal to c squared. Okay, 10 squared is going to simplify to 100 plus 3 squared, which is going to simplify to 9, is equal to c squared. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the other side. Okay, 100 plus 9 is going to equal 109 is equal to c squared, and c is not by itself, so I'm going to square root both sides to get c by itself. So c is officially by itself, and the square root of 109 is going to be 10.44 meters, okay, because it's asking us to round to the nearest hundredth. All right, now number 14, it says a soccer field is a rectangle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Okay, and it says it is 100 meters wide and it is 130 meters long. Okay. The coach asks players to run from one corner to the other corner diagonally. I'm going to go ahead and draw my diag. Okay. What is the distance the players run? So they want me to figure out when the coach asks the players to run from one corner to the other corner, what the distance is going to be. Now, once again, I have a right angle right here, and whatever's across that right angle is always going to be represented by my hypotenuse. So using my information, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, I am trying to solve for c. So I'm going to be plugging in these values into a and b. So I have 100 squared plus 130 squared is equal to c squared. When I simplify my exponents, 100 squared is going to give me 10,000 plus 130 squared is going to give me 16,900 is equal to c squared. Okay, I can simplify by still adding that 10,000 plus 16,900, which is going to equal 26,900 is equal to c squared. Okay, and c is not by itself, so my last step is square rooting on both sides. Okay, so the square root of 26,900 is going to equal 164.01 meters. Once again, we're rounding to the nearest hundredths. All right, and the very last one, it says a 12-foot ramp is placed on a horizontal distance of 9 feet from a moving truck. Find the vertical height of the ramp to the moving truck. Okay, so I have a 12-foot ramp, and when we're thinking about a ramp, our ramp is diag. Okay, it is a ramp to get, like, let's say most schools have ramps. I don't know if you guys have seen one, but at the school. But our ramp is a slight incline to get to from the floor to like a building or something. Okay, so my ramp is going to be slightly diagonal. Okay, which is our hypotenuse, and then it says is placed at a horizontal distance from the moving truck. Okay, so if we're thinking about horizontal, that's going to be our base, which is 9. So I have 12 feet and 9 feet. Okay, now it says find the vertical height right here of the ramp to the moving truck. So what I'm doing is I'm actually finding what one of the legs is going to equal to. So I have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Now I know that my hypotenuse is 12, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in 12 squared there. But I can use that 9 feet for either leg. I can either use it for A or I can either use it for B. So I'm going to go ahead and use it for A. So I have 9 squared plus B squared is equal to 12 squared. Simplifying my exponents, I have 9 squared, which is equal to 81, plus b squared is equal to 12 squared, which is 144. I still have to get b by itself, so I'm going to subtract 81 on both sides. Okay. B squared is now by itself because 81 minus 81 is just 0. And then 144 minus 81 is going to equal 63. Okay. B is not by itself, so I'm going to square root on both sides to get rid of that squared. B is now by itself, and the square root of 63 is equal to 7.94 feet. So that means that that vertical height of that ramp is going to be 7.94 feet. All right. Now, if you have any questions on the study guide, make sure you ask them. Remember, you have a test coming up, so you want to make sure you are studying for your test, okay? All right. Good luck on your test.